Hey guys, what is going on? Thanks so much for watching the channel. Matt Smith here as always. Before I get rolling, like, subscribe, and hype. You know the drill. It really does help me out a ton, and I truly do appreciate it. Just a little bit of time makes a big difference for me, so thanks so much. Colorado, how about an upset win for you over number 22 Iowa State today, 24-17 for the Buffs. Impressive victory because it was not easy and it was not pretty necessarily, but they just had to get it into the house and they found a way to do so. There were some moments in that game where it felt like deja vu from the last 2 weeks. Colorado dominated for the most part the first half, even though they were only able to manage 7 points, but they still found a way to trail at halftime 10-7. And you're sitting there after a late scoring drive from Iowa State. You're just like, man, like what is going on in 2 minute situations right now? It's look, there's a lot going on and we'll address it, but Colorado was able to bounce back in the second half. How about 3 of 5 drives in the second half were scoring drives, and one of them was the basically 4 minute offense that they ran the game out on. So we'll call that a scoring drive in and of itself because you got to accomplish what you needed to. 4 of 5 successful drives in the second half for a team that through 4 Power 4 games to this point had only averaged 7.5 points in second halves. Very, very impressive from the offense to be able to execute in the second frame and get it done. Coming out of halftime, a monster play to Amarion Miller, busted coverage. He gets loose, 70-yard touchdown, and they gained a little bit of their confidence back. That was really important because it started to wane a little bit, I thought, at the end of the first half. Defense started fast again, holding Iowa State to punts on the first 4 drives of the game. Offense took a little bit to get going. They had 4 3-and-outs in this game overall. If you want to kind of put that up against 4 scoring drives in total, 5 successful drives, I think they'll be okay with it because they were able to get the job done today. Certainly statistically a very odd game. Iowa State outgains Colorado. They certainly outrushed Colorado in this game, and it was the rush defense that became susceptible that allowed the Cyclones to really gain some ground in this one. And their starting running back, Sama, had 177 yards, 2 touchdowns, and they finish on the day with 236 rushing yards, which is impressive. Colorado 140 themselves. They didn't really get that ground game going until the latter parts of the second half, and I thought they did some nice things running the ball in the second half. Caden Salter, 57 yards. Dallin Hayden, 58. Micah Welch got the majority of the first half, which surprised me based upon the way that Dallin Hayden ran the ball last week. I thought we'd see them go with Dallin to start this game. They eventually went to him because he was really consistent there in the second half, ripped him off at 4.8 per carry. And they also had to turn to Cam Michael, who has been banged up, got hurt in training camp. They've been trying to figure out a position to put him in. Very talented player in high school, played receiver, played running back in high school. They've had him working in the secondary about the last month, but because Draylon Miller missed this game and Isaiah Harge missed this game, they were down some other options in that backfield outside of Hayden and Welch. So I like the fact that they got Cam Michael involved. Looked a little bit rocky, looked like he hadn't been practicing at that position. His footwork was a little sloppy at times. Had a nice run up the sideline, but outside of that, kind of a failed experiment, I thought there. We'll see if they continue to work him in based upon those other guys and their injuries, if they have to miss more time. Now, heading into the bye week, this team is incredibly dinged up, and it comes at a really good time for them before a very, very tough matchup on the road against Utah. But coming back to today, there was a lot of very interesting things. The end of the first half, I thought, was handled incredibly poorly from the coaching staff yet again. And we have enough of a sample size now to know that there is a fundamental misunderstanding of situational football and how to use timeouts in this program. I'm sorry to say it. It is the truth. They need some help. They could really use a situational coach up in the booth, kind of feeding them their options, because there's no reason why Colorado gets the ball back at the end of the first half with only 15 seconds left. They had 2 timeouts. They could have preserved more time to get the ball back there. And the only reason they even got another bite at the apple at the end of the first half, second quarter, is because of a really good kick return, I should say, by Quentin Gibson, and Iowa State missing a couple of their place kickers, so not being able to kick the ball that well. I just thought Iowa State gets the ball with 2 minutes and 7 seconds left back pinned inside their own 10, maybe even inside their own 5 at that stage. Colorado doesn't use any timeouts as Iowa State goes right down the field. I thought a timeout would be great to stop the clock after one of the many runs on that drive. I also thought a timeout would be great to stop some of that momentum. They didn't use it. They didn't preserve any time, and it worked out for them, but there's absolutely a scenario where, you've got a chance to double up there. And of course, this followed a 4th and 2 where you're just past midfield. I thought with 2 timeouts left there, you might think about going for it at that stage, but they punt the ball away, and you kind of sit back and kick yourself because Iowa State drove right down the field and scored. And you're like, man, maybe we should have been a little bit more aggressive there, because even if Iowa State scores there, right? I mean, it's only a 3-point lead if you flip the ball around. Now, momentum turns, but it turned anyway. And I just felt like it was a little bit of a karmic result there for the wrong choice. But again, I understand trust in your defense. They've been good up until that point. Just felt like a little too conservative with only a 4-point lead in the first half, considering the fact that they were getting the ball back. Again, no matter how you slice it, the timeout should have been taken on Iowa State's drive to at least preserve some time, especially when they got down into the red zone, and they didn't, and they only had 15 seconds left, which forced a Buck Buchanan field goal from 57 yards for the first time this year, which I'm glad they let Buck try one, but at the same time, there's no reason it should have been from that far away, and with that little time left. Good execution on the 2 plays to even get a crack at it, but I thought it was just bungled. I really did. Coach Prime after the game said he went to his favorite spot on campus to pray to the situational football gods and make sure that he was on his P's and Q's. Look, I think there's a misunderstanding of how to handle those situations, and they need some help. It's a pattern. It's a problem, because this is a team you need to manufacture wins with. And today they were able to do it because Iowa State had some big issues themselves. And I thought defensively, Colorado stepped up, especially late in that game, got some big plays, finally got a turnover. We'll talk about it. But either way, it's an issue. And I don't know if they don't want to go the situational coach route. There's got to be better communication offensive coordinator wise. Like, altogether, they've got to handle those situations better, because the team isn't ready for them, because they're not. And it's clear at this stage for me. Anyway, it's just my opinion on that one. But I mean, I've had a lot of people that I've talked to that know this game very well that feel the same way, that it's a problem for this coaching staff. And when you're trying to compete in 1-score games, it can, be the death of you. Today it wasn't, thank goodness, but it kind of has been at other points in the past. And I felt like that was handled poorly. Now, as poorly as that was handled, that was how poorly Iowa State handled the end of the game. Matt Campbell, what the hell are you doing going for it on 4th and 1 on your own 18 with 7 minutes left? What? That was unbelievable. At that moment in the game, he basically just handed it to Colorado. I mean, that was ridiculous. And then they get the ball back. They've got 3rd and 10, and he calls a quarterback draw from their own 49-yard line? Huh? What, with like 3:48 left in the game? And then he punts the ball away? There was some very, very confusing decision making, and credit. Look, I mean, you can punt the ball away there, but why on earth are you running QB draw on a 3rd and 10 from midfield as you need a touchdown and you're going down? If you're going to try and go for it on 4th, at least cut that play in half. That was a terrible call, I thought. I thought altogether Iowa State's staff handled that so poorly at the end of the second half, just as poorly as Colorado's did. So, look, I mean, you're going to get some of those bounces going either way. Now, in the second half, this is where the game turned. It was Tawfiq Bayard's interception that totally turned the game. Colorado's up 21-17. Iowa State's driving. They're in the red zone. They're on the goal line. It was brutal. And, look, a very odd play. There was a pass interference called on Ivan Yates, who was on the outside one-on-one with the tight end. The tight end comes into the end zone, kind of pushes him like as if he's blocking him, but then Yates just straight up tackles him. Letter of the law, that's pass interference. It just is. The ref throws the flag. There's a little bit of a meeting there, and then they just picked up the flag. What? I was blown away because it entirely flipped the game again, and it's a letter of the law call. That's finally one of those breaks we've been talking about Colorado has not gotten. They finally got one. Like, whatever was said, there must have been one of the officials that was adamant that there was contact both ways, because it was the side judge that threw the flag. So I was shocked that they picked it back up. When they did, I was just I was like, what? Like Colorado actually gets that break? You're going to give that to them? Anyway, so huge moment, especially after Tawfiq Bayard had just returned to the game after breaking his hand, I guess a similar injury to what he suffered last year at USF, comes in the game basically one-armed and makes a one-arm interception, changes the entire game. And those were the turnovers Colorado has not been able to generate this year. How about the first turnover for this team since the Delaware game? Huh? What? That's how anemic they've been at generating takeaways, and they were able to get one in just a massive moment right there. You know, it was a very fascinating game in many regards because there was a lot of sloppy football. Now, of course, Iowa State didn't have their kicker, which kind of dictated what they had to do, especially on that first fourth down. They went for it on fourth and forever on their first drive. It was bizarre because they were marching it right down the field. Rocco Beck dealt with a couple of drops tonight. Iowa State's quarterback felt like he was just a little bit off. And credit to Colorado's defense, who really, outside of, look, they got gashed on the ground. So obviously, it is what it is. But they stepped up when they needed to. When you're talking about the last three drives for Iowa State ended with an interception, a turnover on downs, and a punt. I mean, hey, man, when you're converting 3 of 5 for scoring drives and executing 4 of 5 drives in the second half, that's big time stuff right there. And Colorado met the moment, and it was interesting. It was almost like a reversal of how these games have been going. Slower start for the offense in the first half. Second half, they really came out and they played well, right? I mean, they score 17 points in the second half and do enough to get the job done. And Iowa State, I think, is a team that was a little bit overrated. We watched them last week against Cincinnati, and they looked awful. Their defense looked terrible. They're banged up too, but not any more than Colorado is. I mean, I was talking to somebody in the press box before the game. They're like, well, they're leading rushers out. I'm like, they'll be fine. They rushed for over 200 yards tonight. The kid had 177 yards. They were fine. That wasn't the issue. Colorado was without Arden Walker, Draylon Miller, Isaiah Harge, and the guys who have all been out, right? I mean, Carter Stoutmeyer didn't play tonight, which Ben Finiseth came in and played good enough to get the job done today, especially because Tawfiq Bayard had to come in and out. John Slaughter played a little bit more than we'd expected to. Ivan Yates and Makari Vickers at that other corner spot played. Those guys are all right. I think they're just finding a way to get by. And again, when you evaluate the season from the perspective of just finding a way to make consecutive bowl games, like just get these things over the finish line. The style points do not matter this year at all. At all, they don't matter. And ideally, it would be nice if Colorado's offense wasn't as frustrating as it can be to watch at times. I felt like the game plan heading into this game wasn't great. They did a better job of adjusting on the fly. And I thought Caden did a nice job as he began to settle in. Outside of the Wyoming game, this is probably the best game we've seen from him. 16 to 25, 255 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and then again, those 57 rushing yards. But I thought there were some opportune rushes. He did a good job, except for at the end when I guess they called consecutive read option plays when I believe it was a second to last drive for the Buffs. No, excuse me. It wasn't the second to last drive. Actually, it was the second to last drive because Iowa State turned it over there. Excuse me. I'm wrong on that one. They called 3 consecutive, I guess it was zone reads, and he just didn't read it and pulled it, or there were designed runs. It was very confusing. But either way, they had to settle for a field goal, and I thought they were being way too conservative. Some issues in the second half, I think, closing out games can be attributed to the fact that when they do get a lead, sometimes they're a little bit conservative with it. And they were intentionally trying to slow things down on their third to final drive in that fourth quarter. There was 13:29 left when they got on the football after the Tawfiq Bayard interception. And Coach Prime, I could see him going, slow down. They were up 21-17 at that point. I was like, there's way too much time left in this game to go for a ball control offense right now. And they were waiting extended periods of time, and it just got them all sorts of disjointed. They had just come off a touchdown drive. You've got all that momentum off the interception. I think you just keep the pedal to the metal there and keep going. And sometimes that's why I think they can have trouble closing it out. And Coach Prime says he wants that killer attitude. That's how you develop it, right? You're not taking your foot off the gas. March down the field and score some points here and put them away. Develop that killer mindset. So I think there is a little bit of a flaw in approach there. Again, it worked out today, so that's great. These are things to clean up moving forward. But at the end of the day, huge bounce back win, especially being as shorthanded as they were. And Quinn Barnes played today. Amari McNeil played today. Both those guys questionable, as was Reginald Hughes. All three of them played major roles today. Jeremiah Brown defensively stepped up, even though they allowed those 177 yards from Sama on the ground and overall over 230. I thought Jeremiah Brown played better, and he did start. In fact, Martavius French didn't play until the second quarter, unless I missed a snap here or there. But they've clearly liked the back-to-back efforts they've seen from Jeremiah Brown, which, of course, great story, comes with Coach Prime from Jackson State. Hits the transfer portal before the bowl game, and then Nakai Hill-Green leaves. They're like, whoa, we may actually need you. So comes back, and right now is a starting linebacker for the Buffs. Really cool story. Guy who's, kind of been in between positions, but a really, really good young man, and I'm glad he's in this program, and certainly they've needed him here these last several weeks. Altogether, Colorado, when you look at the drive statistics, okay, yes, they had 4 3-and-outs, but 10-plus play drives, 3 of them. That's monster. That means sustaining drives, ripping time off the clock. They had, 3 drives over 4.5 minutes of gameplay, which is important, right? I mean, that is important to take chunks off the board, and they stacked them in the second half. They had, one really fast touchdown strike on the first drive of the second half. They followed it up 4:51, next one 4:26, and they were hanging in there, right? They did a good job with that part of it, but at the same time, it was more of out of necessity, right? I think that there were some good moments, but it was kind of like pulling teeth. It felt like at times offensively, like a couple of bad play calls. Here's a couple of bad screens. They went back to that horizontal passing game in the first half, and I was about to rip my hair out. It was, frustrating because they haven't been doing a good enough job these last couple of weeks getting a quick game going offensively. The one step, hit the back foot, ball's got to be out in a quick slant or a drag. But look, I thought Caden made some nice throws, layered throws tonight. Joseph Williams, monster game this afternoon. 8 balls, 8 targets, 8 catches, 100 and what did he finish with for Joseph? 128 yards and a touchdown. Really nice job. And that's a guy who, of course, freshman of the year in the AAC at Tulsa last year, expectations for him coming in this year, and he has met them, which is really impressive because there's some other transfers on this team that haven't quite lived up to what we expected. That was the guy we expected to hit the ground running, and he has, and he will be a mainstay in this Colorado wide receiver core for 2 more seasons after this, and the Buffs are pretty lucky to have him. Really nice young player. You can only imagine he continues to get better. Third downs, another major area in this game. I thought Colorado did a wonderful job in the first half, not allowing Iowa State to get into third and manageable. And that was really what helped them get them off the field and flip the field so many different times. Held Iowa State 2 of 12 on third down. I mean, you're not going to win many football games when you only convert 2 of 12 third downs. And conversely, Colorado 7 of 15 themselves. Got the job done when they needed to, even if it wasn't all that pretty. And again, so much to clean up, so much to get better on. Like, this is not a performance that you can go have, something equivalent to this and win in Salt Lake City. They got to be way better than they were today to go win in Salt Lake City. But the most important part here is you got the win before the bye, and they're 3-4 entering the bye and not 2-5. And ideally, based upon the standard that has been set in this program, you go 3-4. And as Coach Prime lamented in the press conference, that's not where they want to be. They want to have a better record, clearly. They feel like they should be at least, 5-2 at this stage, but they're not. And here's where you are, and you got to play the cards you're dealt. So, I think their bowl hopes are still there. Whereas if you fall to 2-5, week off before Utah on the road, it's going to be very challenging to win that game. Colorado does not match up well with Utah. So I just think that you enter that game 2-5, you fall to 2-6, and the season looks a lot different. You at least have your third one now. And if you lose a Utah game, at least you got 4 on the other side in Arizona, West Virginia, Arizona State, and Kansas State to try and scrape your way to a bowl. Caden Salter probably saves his job from being taken at least in the next couple of weeks with this win. I would imagine you probably don't even think about Juju now until mathematically you're eliminated, or it depends. I think it just depends upon what happens over the next 3 calendar weeks, but 2 games with Utah and Arizona. Are you 3-6 after that with 3 left, or did you find a way to win one of those and you're 4-5? Who knows what happens? But either way, it's extended your life on this season a little while, which was important because frustration was at a boiling point inside the program. Coach Prime talked about it. Tawfiq Bayard talked about understanding this was a bit of a tipping point game. Either this goes well and you find a way to come back together a little bit, or this goes the wrong way and everybody just splinters apart. My bigger concern is you do have a lot of injuries at this stage. Samuel Okunlola, we haven't seen him in a while. Colorado, I believe, today had nine guys who have started games this year out for them today. Hopefully, after the bye, they can find a way to get some guys like R.J. Johnson back. I don't know statuses on any of these injuries. It doesn't sound like DeKalen Taylor's very close. I don't know where Simeon Price is. Running back wise, it looks like Dallin Hayden's running really well. And the one thing I will tell you is coming out of the bye, he needs to be their starting running back. He was the best back they had in camp. He was running the hardest. And this is coming from a guy who was incredibly critical of Dallin Hayden last year. And this is a guy who really put in the work. And yeah, he may have had the high ankle sprain last year, but he still wasn't getting the job done. Now healthier, looks stronger than he has before, looks quicker. Glad he's healthy. Now, after suffering that wrist injury he had in training camp, good to see him back in the fold. And now that's his job until he loses it, or somebody or he goes down, et cetera, or he just doesn't produce. But the point is that I think they're all right at running back, and that was my biggest concern heading into the year. They've done a good job, even though they really only have 4 scholarship backs. They've done a good job of rotating in Draylon here over the last couple of weeks, having Isaiah ready to go, going to Cam Michael, understanding that they need a guy, not just trying to get by with Hayden and Welch. At least they tried a couple of things with Cam Michael and kept trying to mix it up. Other part of this is the offensive line was outstanding once again. Did not allow a sack. I believe QB hurries were very low. Only, 5 tackles for loss for Iowa State's defense. I thought the run blocking was better, certainly, and it wasn't great to start, but it got better as the game went on, as they started to lean on Iowa State. And I thought the ground game, really for both of these teams, got going in the second half, but especially for the Buffs. Dallin Hayden with some nice carries, and of course Sama kept ripping off explosive runs, which is definitely a little nerve-wracking because they had that area bottled up here over the last few weeks against 2 solid rushing teams if it wasn't the quarterback. Now you go into a matchup next time out with Kyle Whittingham, Devin Dampier, and that Utah team, and they're going to run the hell out of the ball. I thought they did a good job on Iowa State's tight ends. There was a couple of a really nice play action motions, kind of boots, rollouts that they did a good job getting Becht on the run and schemed some looks for their tight ends. Colorado used Zach Atkins more today. He needs to be more involved in the game plan. That's a big body, and he does a nice job. He was victim of the bad field today, and we got to take a second to talk about the turf field, which had a rough day. It has been a problem so far, I would say, this season. Now, obviously, Colorado replaced their grass. They haven't had turf since they had AstroTurf back in the day. And look, I mean, we all feel the way we feel about the grass. We know why they put the turf in, money for concerts. And Coach Prime kept saying that there was some sort of dew on the grass late in games that was very slippery. Well, I'll tell you what, it was way more slick, at least according to this observer today, than it ever was the last 2 years at any point. They had some pretty rainy games there. The wood chips that they used instead of rubber pellets, I think it's more of a sustainability thing. I think it's kind of a newer thing. The players are complaining that they've got cuts all over their legs because of the wood chips, and guys were slipping left, right, and center, even like an hour after the rain had stopped today. The rain was pretty persistent through about the through about the second and third quarter, and then it kind of tapered off, and the sun came out at the end of the game, but the field remained pretty slick. You saw a lot of guys blowing tires, and it's a problem. Like, they got to figure out a way to fix it. I don't know if you replace the wood chips. I don't know if you go to rubber pelts. I don't know how that works. Can you do that mid-year? They've got, 3 weeks, technically full weeks, until they have to play again on that field. That's something if you can look into, figuring something like that out, who knows? Maybe you got a snow game, maybe you got another rain game here coming up as the weather starts to turn as we get closer and closer into later October, into November, et cetera, et cetera. The crowd was a little late arriving today, but I thought was really good today. This is a Boulder crowd that I think has been a little bit hesitant because they're not quite sure who this team was. But you show up for a ranked team. Students showed up today. It looked like at first there may be some no-shows. Everybody filled out. Crowd filled out really nicely. And I thought second half, and even Coach Prime really gave the fan base a shout out because he felt like it was just the environment in there this afternoon, considering the fact that it was raining, everybody was rocking. So, great to see for an afternoon kickoff. Please, please, Lord, some more of those the rest of this year. I mean, those 8 o'clocks are brutal. Although I will say it was almost a little bizarre to be playing in the afternoon. It felt like, oh man, like, after these last 2 games, it's incredible to even being able to get out of there by 7-6 o'clock. And the reason that I don't have the post game done from the field is I had to skedaddle to watch my Cubbies go lose in the NLDS to the Brewers, Milwaukee. Anyway, they got me to be emotionally invested about baseball for the first time since they won in 2016. So I'll give them that. Even though as a Cubs fan, as I said, 2016 after they won, everything else is gravy. But I digress. Thanks for listening. That's why it was not out after the game because, look, some things are just more important. And you guys will be all right. You got a whole bye week to listen to this. Anyway, moving on. Other things I wanted to cover. Again, just how badly Matt Campbell handled the end of that game, considering what he did and some of the decisions that he made last week in their loss to Cincinnati. Brutal couple of weeks for a 3-time Big 12 Coach of the Year. Like the quarterback draw from midfield blew my mind. I kind of looked around like, did I misread the situation? Because you've got the ball in your own 49. It's 3rd and 10. There's 3:48 left. Like there's less than 3:50. Come on, man. Don't you want to cut that in half? Like, I just hate watching bad decision-making sometimes, even if it works out in your favor. It's just rough. Absolutely rough. Kids rushed the field, $50,000 fine. Coach Prime did not know that it was a fine, nor did he know how big of a fine it was. And I agree with him. $50,000 for a rush in the field fine is crazy. I hate some of these new rules. The fact that Colorado got fined $50,000 for the chant, the Bleep the Mormons chant that pretty much goes on everywhere. I understand it's inappropriate. I understand it's not all that classy. You're talking about students who are drunk and high past like 11:30 because they keep scheduling it. Like you're going to fine them $50,000 for that. It happens everywhere. You wouldn't believe the type of stuff that I heard last year against Kansas in Arrowhead Stadium, last year in Lubbock. I'm just saying, like, anyway, dumb fine that they had to pay. And then Colorado upgraded, for those of you who don't know, a lot of their security measures. They had a lot more security there today. I believe they're adding some sort of AI face tracking software to the cameras to predetermine behavior or try and find behavior before it starts, et cetera, et cetera. They are also hiding undercover cops in the crowd now, which, look, I mean, I think there were a couple of issues, but it's football. I mean, anyway, whatever. Hope it works out for them. And it's worth it because there seems like that's a lot of money they're dumping into those extra security measures. Coach Prime, warrior man, to go through what he went through this week with that surgery, get back immediately to practice. He felt like the kids could tell what type of statement it made for him to be there and him to be all in. And, Jeremiah Brown said a lot of coaches, especially when things don't start going well, they stop pouring into you. And Coach Prime being there right after surgery, showing the kids how invested he was and how committed he was, even if maybe to I don't know because it sounds like everything went well, so I'm thrilled. But he is not above potentially putting himself, in a sacrificial situation to honor the commitment that he made to these players. And that's one thing that he talked about after the game. Look, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I am here for you. I'm in this the same as you are. And I think that was important this week. I was wondering if these kids who, again, you've got 38 guys here in their final year of eligibility and a lot of these new transfers yet again, and they just don't have those long-term bonds together, and how much would that really affect them? And it looked like it did today because you had a shorthanded team go off and knock off a ranked team at home and hold serve against a Power 4 program, a conference foe on their home field, which is their first Power 4 win at home of the season, which is pretty crazy, right? And as we're talking about the seventh game of the year, finally getting that one, I guess, considering the standard now, not based upon the past. I think in the past, you'd be like, oh, wow, at least they got a Power 4 win at home. Salter, you know, some good, some really rough. How did he miss that double reverse pass to the sideline? He sailed. I don't know. It was there. The play almost got blown up like three different times, but it was there if he would have just completed it and he sailed it. I think he was intended for Sincere. I'm not exactly sure. Hell of a play by Omarion to even flip it over to him. He got blown up on that one. Missed some other stuff. You know, there was one where I think it was their first down of the game to Joseph Williams. It looked like it was incomplete, called incomplete on the field. They reviewed it and they overturned it to a complete catch. Live to me, it looked incomplete because Salter just dirted it. He came back and he was better on some of his out routes. I know fans are frustrated. Juju is not a better option right now. Point blank, period. Point blank, period. From the things that we're hearing behind the scenes, there are some immaturity things popping up for him, right? I mean, he just turned 18 a couple of weeks ago. To completely comprehend the standard that is being asked of him right now, even if he is wise for his age, even if he is mature for his age, there are some things behind the scenes that they've got to find a way to clean up with him. There just are. And I'm not saying he's alone, but that's what's going on. Just so you know. Just so you know. Let's see. Other things I wanted to touch on. Talked about Joseph Williams and how impressive he was. Again, that's just Colorado's second Power 4 win in their last 7 tries, if you think about it. That's just 2 for their last 7 against Power 4 opponents. Big time to upset a ranked opponent with all those recruits in the building, especially a field rush, having that cool environment. I think that really paid off. Michael Irvin on the sidelines, absolutely cracking me up. He is one of a kind, man. I remember waking up. I used to do a Sunday morning show on the radio, and every morning during NFL season, while he was still working for NFL Network, we went on the air at 7:00, and so locally, and at 6:00 is when NFL Network's preview show starts. And so on the way down to the station, I used to just put on NFL Network on my phone and kind of just put it on the seat and just listen to Michael Irvin going off at 6 a.m. There's nothing that gets you more fired up than Michael Irvin, and he was, hyping up Dallin Hayden and gave a great speech to the team afterwards. And just good to see the sigh of relief for everybody because, look, this is a team that's been struggling for leadership. This is a team that has struggled to close games, has struggled to limit their own mistakes, and certainly limit more than their opponent has in any given game. And I thought they did a really nice job of just taking care of what they needed to today and doing enough. There were plenty of different times when things could have gotten out of hand. And again, last drive of the game is 3rd and 17. I'm like, oh, they're just handed it off. I don't know why Salter didn't hand it off on that second down before he got tackled behind the line. That didn't make sense. That whole end of game sequence was really rough. Okay. It was after the interception offensively, everything was a challenge up until that final drive. Hayden breaks off a couple, and then it's 3rd and 17, and he's got Salter throwing and completes a massive one over the middle to Joseph Williams to essentially ice the game. And I was like, whoa, I mean, that's a ballsy call. As Coach Prime afterwards, he goes, wait, was that 3rd and 17? He had to double check that it was 3rd and 17. I didn't think he was screwing around afterwards. He goes, if I knew that, maybe I'd make a different decision. I think he was kind of just letting Pat Shurmur rock with it there. But if that ball hits the ground or that's not a completion, clock stops, you're giving Iowa State the football back, and they got timeouts to work with. That could have gone the other direction very, very quickly. So big time conversion, everything on the line, had to have it. I asked him if there was any thought on maybe just running the ball there to keep the clock going, make Iowa State. I think they might have been down to their last timeout, burn their last timeout, but he was like, no, we got to have it there. And so, look, credit to them. And it worked out. That was a big, big play from Caden and Joseph Williams. Step up on a 3rd and 17, deliver that ball layered over the middle. Great catch again by Joseph. He had a couple good catches over the middle of the field today. Look, they're still struggling to get Sincere Brown involved. I don't quite understand that with what his skill sets are. Maybe they need to start running him on some comebacks, right, to open up some of those deep shots. Maybe that's what they need to do because you're seeing a lot of off coverage, especially in those man situations being played on him because the secret's out. The kid can absolutely fly. So they still have to continue to find ways to get him the football. Quentin Gibson, they're trying to work in, had a bad drop today. had a couple of good kick returns, but again, as a result of poor kickoffs from Iowa State, although they were kind of low line drives, had a couple of nice catches on them, fielded a couple really nicely. Thought Iowa State's punter really punted the hell out of the football today. Greaves was a little bit better. No shanks today, which was good to see. Mata took care of what he needed to. Unfortunately, Buchanan didn't hit that, but again, it should have never been 57 yards. They've got to handle that situation differently. And, I don't think they're going to make any changes there, if I'm just being honest with you. That's just Coach Prime and how he wants to handle things. It is what it is. It's all on him in those moments, and he's got to own them when they don't work out for him. But today, I thought a great job of everybody with a complete team effort overall at different times today. And again, a great example from Coach Prime. Again, what a warrior. I mean, to go through what he went through. I don't know if I have a procedure on Tuesday and I'm back to practice Wednesday. I might even take a day off, not him. And I think that was a statement to this team to say, hey, I mean, we're all in here, and we have to have this one. And they did, because again, as I said, you go to the bye week 2-5, things start to, feel yucky, quite frankly, and then you go out and maybe get your teeth kicked in by Utah, which again, that is going to be a very, very challenging game. And I think for their sake, really good that they have 2 weeks to prepare. And the one thing is, now you've got a bye week. Sometimes it's hard to maintain focus. How do you maintain the focus? Normally, everybody wants to kind of take a breath, right? But you got to find a way to stay dialed in. I think of coming off the bye last year, if I'm not mistaken, and I'll have to go back actually now and look at this. But before I find it, I'm going to say off the bye week, the games were Kansas State and Texas Tech, if I am not mistaken. I know one was for sure Kansas State. And then, it was Texas. Look at that. What a memory. But hard to forget 2024 in many ways. Still, really, really important win for Colorado today, all things told. Everybody can kind of take a breath, knowing that there's a lot of work left to be done, and important for the second half of the season to get some of these guys back healthy. Hopefully you can find a way to do that, because Colorado's at the extent of depth at some position rooms right now, and they could certainly use some contributors, back and into this lineup. It'd be great to be able to get RJ Johnson back at some point this season. We'll see if they're able to do that, among other guys. Trust me, Draylon, Arden Walker, they need back, and there's a bunch of them. I thought London Merritt was outstanding today. I mean, he is a dog. Alex McPherson made some really good plays in the run game. Altogether, defensively, again, Jeremiah Brown led the team. He had 10 tackles, tackle and a half for loss. Yeah, outside of that, man, Merritt played well. Sean Myers, shout out to Sean Myers, had a really big stop when he came in the game. I think that was before the Byard interception, after Iowa State drove it all the way down 21-17. Keaton Wade, I think, is playing a little bit better overall. Look, all told today, Hughes, up and down, not great. I didn't think today. Hodge, yeah, he had some moments today. He had a nice blitz, but gave up one. There was a bunch of missed tackles, I thought, little bit later in this football game, but all told, not as many as there have been, certainly not at the beginning of the year. And the defense overall, I think, has gotten much better, right? I mean, you only allow 17 points today. It was 35 last week, but at the same time, they got that one touchdown late that after the game was kind of a way to salt things away after your bad punt return blunder there. And overall, much better defensively these last 3 weeks than what they showed us the first 4. Very encouraging. I think it started with Wyoming, and then they're starting to stack them. I think Robert Livingston is much more confident in who he has back there, despite some of these injuries, able to get the job done, and they're getting guys more prepared on that side of the football. Offensively, they got to come up with some more stuff here for the second half over the bye week. They got to continue to find ways to stay with the ground game. I like the fact they had more zone read in there today. Caden's got to do a little bit better job with some of that zone read. A couple of them were nice. He busted a big one early in the game, but still continuing to make the wrong decision sometimes, I think, on that. You're probably just going to have to live with some of that stuff. Either way, it's a huge win for Colorado, and now we head into the bye week. I'm sure I'll have plenty to talk about coming up here this week. Really important win for this team's psyche in general, the program psyche in general, and hopefully they can find a way to add some more on the other side of the bye week. I appreciate everybody out there. I know this was a little bit delayed, but I had to watch my Cubbies, even if it was in heartbreak once again. So for everybody out there, get in the comments, hype me up, like me up, subscribe. We'll have an episode coming out with Brian. Again, I appreciate everybody out there for tuning in, as you always do. Do not take it for granted. And I know you've got plenty of options for where to get your coverage, so I appreciate you continually returning to spend a little bit of time with me. Hope everybody has a great rest of your weekend, and I'll talk to you at some point next week.